what I want to talk about now is word choice. Word choice is probably one of the most important decisions that you'll ever have to make as a writer. Word choice is so important, in fact, that it's going to take 2 videos to cover how important it is. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, deciding which word is the right one can be a challenge because there's a lot of words that have similar meanings, but if you look at them more closely, you can see that they're slightly different, and each one is going to make a different impression on your audience. This is what we talk about when we say the difference between connotation, the dictionary definition of a word, and denotation, what it makes the audience or the reader feel, the emotional connection that they have with that word. So first, let's start off by talking about an appropriate level of formality. This is really going to depend on who it is that's going to be reading whatever you've written. If you're sending an email or a letter to a friend or someone that you work closely with, you can be more informal in your language. But if you're writing academically for school or professional writing where it's got to be more formal, then you want to avoid informal language. You want to make sure that you stick with formal language because you want to always make your best impression. Now let's look at some examples. You might be sending an email to someone that you know well, and it could say something like, "Maisha is great. Hire her if you can." But if this same friend needs you to recommend her to somebody you don't know, you're going to want to be more formal. "I am pleased to recommend Maisha Fisher. She will bring good ideas and extraordinary energy to your organization." So you can see the difference between an informal email and a much more formal email. And if you're trying to help out your friend Maisha, you want to make sure that you do the right thing. And if doing the right thing means being more formal, that's definitely what you should do. Now let's talk about slang and colloquial language, because they are not the same thing. Slang is very informal. A lot of times slang is confined to a small group, maybe a certain regional area or a certain age group, and it changes very quickly. What's the hottest new slang word today will be completely out tomorrow, and it'll be replaced by some brand new slang term that's been ushered in almost out of nowhere. Now, colloquial language is less formal than slang. It's more widely used, so more people are going to know about it. It sticks around longer than most slang, and here's a few examples. A lot, that's colloquial. In a bind, that's colloquial language also. And snooze, that's colloquial. Those aren't super formal, but they're not as so informal that they're considered to be slang. Now, writers who use slang and colloquial language always take a chance because it's always possible that they won't be taken as seriously as they want to be, or they won't be completely understood. If you don't understand the language somebody's writing, you're not going to understand their meaning. So if you're writing for a general audience, the best idea is to not use too much slang or too much colloquial language. And in academic writing, anything that you're writing for school, you should never use slang. That makes it look very informal and very not academic. So you want to really avoid that. Now let's talk about jargon. Jargon is a specific vocabulary of a particular job, and this enables members to speak and write concisely to one another. Now, jargon exists in almost every job you can think of. In the education field, there's certain jargon. Teachers can talk and they know what they mean. In restaurants, in the car business, in the banking business, every specific type of business has its own jargon. The problem is they get so used to communicating in this jargon that they forget other people don't know what it means. So you need to reserve your jargon if you're writing for an audience that's going to understand the terminology. Otherwise, you're going to have to explain everything that you've said or everything that you've written. Let me show you an example. The VDTs in composition were down last week, so we had to lay out on dummies and crop and size the art with a wheel. Now you can see all those question marks popping up because most of the people would be thinking, huh? What did you just say? I have no idea what that means. So here's what it means in real language. The video display terminals were not working last week in the composing room, where models of the newspaper pages are made up for printing. So we had to arrange the contents of each page on a large sheet and use a wheel, a kind of circular slide rule, to figure out the size and shape of the illustrations. Now that the jargon has been removed and replaced with regular language, completely easy to understand what was being talked about. Now let's move on to talk about pompous language. Anytime something is pompous, that means it's too stuffy. It's too formal for the audience, purpose, or topic. And sometimes if you use this overly formal language, this pompous language, it's going to make your writing seem insincere, or it might even come across as funny when that's not what you intended. So you want to be very careful that you don't go too far on the side of formality, because there is a line, and if you cross it, you're going to go back to not being taken seriously. Let me give you an example. Pursuant to the August 9 memorandum regarding unit cost of automotive fuels, it is incumbent upon us to endeavor to make maximal utilization of telephonic communication in lieu of personal visitation. Now that just means who knows what. All it looks like is somebody learned a bunch of new big words and decided to use every single one of them in one memo. Here's what it says restated in language everybody can understand. As of August 9th, gas prices require us to use the telephone whenever possible rather than make personal visits. Now that makes a lot more sense. There's nobody who won't understand that. So this is why you should avoid pompous language, because it's not understood by most people and you just come across like you have a real attitude problem. Now let's talk about euphemisms. Euphemisms are words or phrases that make unpleasant ideas seem less harsh. And there are so many euphemisms. We don't have time in one video to go into all of those, but let me show you a couple of examples. Your position is being eliminated. That's going to soften the blow a little bit instead of saying you're fired or congratulations, you've been laid off. Sometimes using euphemisms can appeal to an audience by showing that you're considerate of other people's feelings, that you don't want to be too blunt, so you're using euphemisms to sort of soften the blow. But it can also make you sound insincere or like you're trying to evade some particular question or topic. So you have to be careful. Then there's doublespeak. Doublespeak is language that's used to hide or distort the truth. So let me show you an example. During massive layoffs in the business world, companies may describe a job-cutting policy as employee repositioning, de-verticalization, or right-sizing. The public, and especially those people who lost a job as a result of one of these things, they know it's doublespeak. And what doublespeak usually serves to do is just make people angry. So you want to avoid doublespeak in your writing, because unless you're trying to make people mad, you really want to be honest and be upfront, be mindful of how this is going to be perceived by the people who read it, or if it's going to be spoken out loud by the people who hear it. So word choice really does matter, and it's very, very important that you take it seriously, because choosing the right word is going to make all the difference.